You reach for the USB drive, the computer is right there. You line it up, push gently, and it stops, dead. You flip it, same resistance. You flip it again and it slides home like nothing was ever wrong. It happens so often it feels personal, 2 possible orientations, a 50-50 chance. Yet somehow it almost never works the first time, sometimes not even the second. People have named it the USB paradox, memes exist, entire internet threads exist, you've lived it. But the real reason is far more surprising. This isn't random bad luck. It's the collision of a deliberate engineering decision from the 1990s, human psychology, and a connector that looks symmetrical when it absolutely is. Let's go back to the beginning. In the early 1990s, computers were a mess of different ports. Parallel ports for printers, serial ports for modems, PS2 for keyboards and mice. Each had its own cable, its own drivers, its own headaches. A team at Intel, led by engineer Ajay Bhatt, set out to replace all of them with one universal connection. They called it USB, Universal Serial Bus. They succeeded beyond anyone's expectations. USB became the default way to plug almost anything into a computer, but one design choice haunted it for more than 20 years. The Type A connector is not reversible. Bhatt has been open about it. Making the plug work either way up would have required twice as many pins and twice as much internal circuitry. That would have roughly doubled the cost of every connector and every cable at a time when USB was still unproven. Computer manufacturers were already skeptical. A more expensive standard risked never catching on at all. So the team made a calculated trade-off: keep it cheap. Accept a 50-50 chance of getting the orientation wrong, live with the annoyance. In interviews years later, Bhatt admitted the biggest lasting frustration was exactly this: the lack of reversibility. In hindsight, he said, it could have been better. At the time, cost mattered more than convenience. The connector itself doesn't help. From the outside, it looks perfectly rectangular and symmetrical. Nothing screams this side up. Inside, though, there's a plastic tongue that only fits one way. The metal contacts sit on one side only. The official USB specification even requires a logo on the top of the plug, so users can feel or see the correct orientation. Many manufacturers simply ignored that detail. Ports on the back of computers or the sides of laptops are often hard to see. In the dark or under a desk, the logo becomes useless. Here where things get really interesting. Even when you start with the correct orientation, the plug often refuses to go in cleanly. The edges of the metal shell catch on the edges of the port. The resistance feels almost identical to the wrong orientation. There is almost no clear tactile feedback that says you're close, keep pushing, versus you're upside down, flip it. Your brain interprets that ambiguous resistance as proof you have the wrong side, so you flip. A Bayesian analysis of the problem makes the pattern even clearer. Researchers modeled the process. You start with a 50% chance of the right orientation. The time it takes to successfully seat a correctly oriented plug follows a distribution with a typical success time around 1 second if everything lines up. But because the feedback is so poor, most people abandon the first attempt long before that. They flip after less than a second of resistance. That means even people who start correctly often flip away from success. Simulations show the probability of succeeding on the pure first try drops well below 50%. The single flip becomes the most common outcome. The infamous double flip, wrong, right, then wrong again, happens more often than pure chance would predict. Have you ever noticed how the third try always seems to work? That's not magic. By the third attempt, you've usually returned to the original orientation. But this time you push with more force or a slightly different angle. The mechanical catch finally clears. None of this is your fault. The design creates a feedback loop that almost guarantees extra flips. For years, the industry lived with it. USB-A became so universal that changing it felt impossible. Then USB-C arrived, fully reversible, same shape either way. The pins are duplicated so orientation no longer matters. The old paradox finally had an exit ramp, yet billions of USB-A ports and cables remain in use. Laptops still ship with them, external drives still use them, the frustration lives on. There's a quiet lesson in the whole saga: engineering is always a set of trade-offs. Cost versus convenience, simplicity versus user experience. The Intel team chose the path that got USB into the world. They won the war of standards. Everyday users paid a small, recurring tax in wasted seconds and muttered curses. Next time the drive refuses to go in, you'll know what's actually happening, not cosmic bad luck. Not a three-sided connector existing in quantum superposition. Just a rectangular piece of metal and plastic shaped by a 1990s budget decision, colliding with the way human hands and human brains interpret resistance. You flip it once, you flip it again, and on the third try it slides home. The universe of plugs and ports is a little more orderly than it feels in the moment, and a little more human than the engineers ever intended. If you enjoy stories like this, the hidden reasons behind everyday objects, and the surprising decisions that shape them, subscribe to Story Behind the Things. New documentaries every week that make the ordinary world feel extraordinary.